The kindness trap. 8. Surprising ways. Excessive generosity can backfire. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that might sound counterintuitive at first. The potential downsides of being too kind. Now, before you click away thinking I'm advocating for selfishness, hear me out. We've all been taught that kindness is a virtue, one of the most important qualities we can cultivate. And that's true! Generosity and compassion are foundational to healthy relationships and communities. But what happens when our giving nature goes into overdrive? When our desire to help others comes at a significant cost to ourselves? Or when our kindness actually prevents growth in those we're trying to help? That's what psychologists and relationship experts call the kindness trap. When excessive generosity backfires in surprising and sometimes painful ways. In the next 40 minutes, we'll explore 8 surprising ways being too kind can actually hurt you and the people around you. Plus, I'll share practical strategies to maintain your generous spirit while establishing healthy boundaries. If you've ever felt drained by giving too much, wondered why your helpfulness isn't appreciated, or struggled with saying no to people who need you, this video is for you. Let's get into it. Context. The psychology of giving. Before we dive into the 8 ways kindness can backfire, let's talk about why we're wired to be kind in the first place. Studies show that when we help others, our brains release feel-good chemicals like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. It's no wonder giving feels good. We're literally getting a neurochemical reward. But beyond biology, there are deeply rooted social reasons we value kindness. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that generosity evolved as a survival strategy for our ancestors. Sharing resources and helping group members strengthened social bonds and improved everyone's chances of survival. In most spiritual and philosophical traditions, kindness is considered a core virtue. From Buddhism's emphasis on compassion to Christianity's golden rule, our moral frameworks generally celebrate selflessness. So with all these biological, evolutionary, and cultural forces pushing us toward kindness, it's no surprise that many of us struggle to set limits on our generosity. The line between healthy giving and harmful self-sacrifice can be blurry. This is where the kindness trap begins to form. Let's look at the first way excessive generosity can backfire. Trap 1. Emotional exhaustion and burnout. The first trap is perhaps the most obvious, but it's surprisingly easy to fall into. Emotional exhaustion and burnout. When we continuously prioritize others' needs above our own, we deplete our emotional resources. This depletion happens gradually, so gradually that we often don't notice until we're running on empty. Dr. Maslach. Compassion fatigue is a real phenomenon. People in helping professions or those who act as the emotional support for friends and family can experience a state similar to burnout. The symptoms include emotional numbness, decreased satisfaction from helping, and even physical exhaustion. This isn't just about feeling tired. Chronic emotional exhaustion can lead to serious health consequences, including weakened immune function, sleep disturbances, increased anxiety and depression, physical symptoms like headaches and digestive issues. And here's the irony. When we reach this state of depletion, we actually become less effective at helping others. Our patience thins, our empathy diminishes, and the quality of our support deteriorates. I experienced this firsthand a few years ago when I became the go-to person for a friend going through a difficult divorce. I was answering late-night calls, helping with childcare, and providing constant, emotional support, all while working full-time and managing my own family responsibilities. After months of this, I started dreading her calls. I'd feel irritable during our conversations and then guilty about my irritability. Eventually, I caught a bad case of the flu that lingered for weeks, my body's way of forcing me to stop and rest. The solution isn't to stop being kind. Rather, it's to recognize that sustainable kindness requires self-care. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. Here are some practical ways to avoid the emotional exhaustion trap. Schedule regular self-care activities and treat them as non-negotiable. Learn to recognize your early warning signs of depletion. Practice setting time limits on your helping activities. Diversify the support system for those you help, so you're not the only one they rely on. Remember, true generosity includes being generous with yourself. Trap 2. Enabling destructive behavior. The second way excessive kindness can backfire is when our help enables destructive behavior in others. Sometimes, what looks like kindness is actually preventing necessary growth or change. When we repeatedly rescue someone from the natural consequences of their actions, we may inadvertently reinforce harmful patterns. Addiction specialist. In the addiction field, we often see family members who think they're being kind by giving money, making excuses, or cleaning up messes. But this help actually prolongs the addiction because it shields the person from experiencing the full impact of their choices. But enabling isn't limited to addiction scenarios. It can show up in many relationships. Parents who complete assignments for struggling children. Friends who constantly loan money to someone who never budgets. Partners who tolerate disrespectful behavior to avoid conflict. Managers who cover for underperforming employees instead of addressing issues. The intention behind these actions is genuinely kind, but the impact often perpetuates dysfunction. Consider the story of Mark and his brother, Jamie. Jamie struggled with financial responsibility, frequently overspending and then asking Mark for loans to cover essentials like rent. Mark, wanting to be a supportive brother, always helped out. But over 5 years, the pattern never changed. Jamie never learned to budget because he knew Mark would bail him out. Eventually, Mark realized his kindness was preventing Jamie from developing crucial life skills. Distinguishing between helpful support and harmful enabling can be challenging. Here are some questions to ask yourself. Is my help addressing a temporary crisis or a chronic pattern? Am I solving a problem for someone that they could solve themselves? Has my assistance led to positive change over time, or is the same issue recurring? Am I protecting someone from important life lessons? True kindness sometimes means allowing others to experience the natural consequences of their actions, so they can grow and learn. This doesn't mean abandoning people in need, but rather supporting them in ways that foster resilience and responsibility. As the proverb goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Trap 3. Attracting exploitative relationships. Our third trap is particularly painful. Excessive generosity can attract people who will exploit your kindness. Overly giving people often become magnets for takers, individuals who are happy to receive but rarely reciprocate. These relationships become deeply imbalanced, with emotional and material resources flowing primarily in one direction. Psychologist. People who consistently override their own needs to please others often find themselves surrounded by individuals who take advantage of this tendency. The problem isn't just that givers attract takers, it's that they often stay in these relationships far longer than is healthy. Research shows that extreme givers often struggle with low self-worth. They may unconsciously believe they need to earn love through constant giving, making them vulnerable to manipulation. Here's how the cycle typically works. The giver offers help, support, or resources generously. The taker accepts readily without reciprocating. The giver feels momentarily valued but eventually depleted. Rather than addressing the imbalance, the giver tries harder. The taker increases demands, often using guilt or praise to maintain the dynamic. Testimonial speaker. I was always the friend everyone called in a crisis. I'd drop everything to help, loan money I could barely afford to give, and be available at all hours. I thought these people valued our friendship, but I started noticing they only contacted me when they needed something. When I went through a difficult time myself, most of them disappeared. That was my wake-up call. If you're nodding along to this, you might be caught in this trap. Here are some warning signs you're in an exploitative relationship. The relationship feels consistently one-sided. Your needs are routinely minimized or ignored. You feel guilty saying no or setting boundaries. The person becomes distant when you ask for help. You feel anxious or depleted after spending time together. Breaking free from these relationships requires recognizing your own worth and learning to set healthy boundaries. Sometimes it means stepping back from certain relationships entirely. Remember, healthy relationships involve mutual giving and receiving. Someone who genuinely cares about you will respect your boundaries and appreciate, not exploit, your generosity. As Maya Angelou wisely said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Trap 4. Diminished self-identity. The fourth way excessive kindness can backfire is through the gradual erosion of your sense of self. When your primary focus becomes meeting others' needs, your own identity, your preferences, dreams, and authentic voice can gradually fade into the background. Researcher, many chronic people-pleasers eventually reach a crisis point where they realize they've lost touch with who they really are. They know what everyone else wants, but they've forgotten what they want. This disconnection from self can lead to profound existential distress. This identity erosion happens gradually through several mechanisms. First, constant accommodation of others. Preferences can cause us to lose touch with our own. If you always defer to others' restaurant choices, movie picks, or activity suggestions, you may eventually struggle to identify what you actually enjoy. Second, chronically suppressing your authentic reactions and opinions. To keep others happy creates internal discord. You begin to feel like you're playing a role rather than living authentically. Finally, deriving your worth primarily from being helpful creates a fragile self-concept that depends on external validation. Consider the case of Elaine, a woman who spent 20 years as the perfect supportive spouse, involved parent, and community volunteer. When her children left for college and her marriage ended, she experienced a profound identity crisis. In therapy, she realized she'd been so focused on meeting others' expectations that she'd never developed her own interests or voice. At 48, she was asking herself, "Who am I when I'm not taking care of everyone else?" The path back to self-identity involves reconnecting with your authentic core. Set aside regular time for self-reflection. Experiment with activities based on your interests, not obligations. Practice expressing your genuine opinions in low-risk situations. Notice when you're saying yes out of habit rather than true desire. Reconnect with interests you may have abandoned to please others. The philosopher Aristotle noted that virtue lies in the middle, ground between deficiency and excess. Being attentive to others' needs is virtuous. Losing yourself in the process is not. By maintaining your sense of self while being kind to others, you bring your whole, authentic self to your relationships, which, ironically, makes you more effective at truly helping others in meaningful ways. Trap 5. Breeding resentment. Our fifth trap might be the most emotionally damaging. The way excessive kindness can breed deep resentment. When we consistently override our own needs or boundaries to please others, we often think we're choosing kindness. But suppressed needs don't simply disappear, they transform into resentment that can poison our relationships and our well-being. Therapist. Many people believe that setting boundaries is selfish, when in reality, boundaries prevent resentment. Without them, giving becomes unsustainable. You start keeping an unconscious tally of all you've sacrificed, and eventually that tally spills over into bitterness. The resentment cycle typically unfolds like this. You override your needs or boundaries to be helpful. You expect recognition or reciprocation, often unconsciously. When that doesn't materialize, you feel undervalued. Rather than addressing this directly, you continue giving while building resentment. Eventually, the resentment erupts in disproportionate anger or withdrawal. Let's look at how this plays out in real life. Imagine a coworker who stays late every day to help colleagues finish their projects. She never complains and always says, "It's no problem," when asked for help. But internally, she's thinking, "Why am I always the one staying late? Why doesn't anyone offer to help me? Don't they see how much I'm sacrificing?" Over time, her helpful demeanor masks growing resentment. Then one day, when asked to stay late again, she snaps disproportionately, damaging relationships and her professional reputation. The tragedy is that most people have no idea she was feeling resentful because she never communicated her needs or limits. Healthy giving comes from a place of genuine choice and abundance. Unhealthy giving comes from obligation, fear, or the hope of getting something in return. Here are strategies to avoid the resentment trap. Practice authentic communication about your capacity and needs. Notice when you're saying yes but feeling no. Give yourself permission to set limits without guilt. Express appreciation for others' generosity to create reciprocal giving cultures. Learn to distinguish between generosity and people-pleasing. Remember, true kindness isn't about martyrdom. As the writer Brené Brown points out, choose discomfort over resentment. The temporary discomfort of setting a boundary is far less painful than the lasting damage of resentment. Trap 6. Creating dependency. The sixth way excessive kindness can backfire is by creating unhealthy dependency in those we're trying to help. When we consistently do things for others that they could do for themselves, we may inadvertently communicate that we don't believe in their capabilities. Over time, this can undermine their confidence and foster dependency. Psychologist. The development of self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to succeed, requires opportunities to struggle, fail, and ultimately overcome challenges. When well-meaning helpers swoop in to prevent any discomfort, they're actually interfering with this crucial developmental process. This dependency trap appears in many contexts. Parents who handle every small problem their child encounters. Managers who fail to delegate because it's faster to do it myself. Friends who offer solutions before the other person has had a chance to think through the problem. Partners who take over tasks because the other person doesn't do it right. To understand how this plays out, let's look at a common scenario in parenting. A child struggles to tie their shoes. The parent, running late and seeing the child's frustration, steps in to tie them. This happens repeatedly over weeks. The child, receiving the message that shoe tying is too difficult, stops trying. The parent continues tying the shoes, inadvertently prolonging the learning process and undermining the child's confidence. While this example focuses on a child, the same dynamic occurs in adult relationships. When we consistently rescue others from challenges they could overcome with effort, we're not being kind, we're stunting their growth. True kindness often means supporting others through difficulty rather than removing the difficulty entirely. It means believing in people's capacity to solve problems and develop resilience. Here are strategies to avoid creating dependency. Ask, am I helping or taking over? Before jumping in, offer guidance rather than solutions when appropriate. Celebrate others' efforts, not just outcomes. Be patient with others' learning processes. Recognize that temporary struggle often leads to long-term growth. As the proverb states, the greatest gift you can give someone is the belief that they can solve their own problems. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is step back and let others develop their own strength. Trap 7. Undermining authentic relationships. Our seventh trap explores how excessive kindness can actually prevent the formation of deep, authentic relationships. Genuine connection requires authenticity, the willingness to show up as your real self, with all your imperfections and boundaries intact. But excessive people-pleasing creates relationships built on a carefully constructed facade rather than authentic interaction. Researcher. Paradoxically, our tendency to present only our most accommodating, agreeable side actually prevents others from truly knowing us. Real intimacy requires the courage to be seen, including our limitations, our needs, and occasionally, our disagreement. Think about your closest relationships. Aren't they the ones where you can be your authentic self? Where you can say no without fear, express differing opinions, and still feel accepted? Excessive kindness that overrides your authentic self creates relationships with these problems. Surface-level connection. When you're always agreeable, conversations remain superficial. Conditional acceptance. You feel loved for what you do, not who you are. Lack of trust. Others sense your inauthenticity even if they can't name it. Emotional distance. True vulnerability becomes impossible. Consider the story of Michael, who prided himself on being the friend who never said no, never disagreed, and always prioritized others' needs. He had many acquaintances, but confided that he felt profoundly lonely. In therapy, he realized that no one really knew him. They knew only the accommodating version he presented. By always prioritizing harmony over honesty, he'd created pleasant but shallow relationships. The irony is that most people are actually drawn to authenticity, even when it includes appropriate boundaries and occasional disagreement. Seeing someone's full humanity, including their limits, creates trust and depth. Here are ways to cultivate authentic connection while remaining kind. Practice kind honesty instead of automatic agreement. Express boundaries with compassion rather than apology. Share your genuine thoughts and feelings when appropriate. Show vulnerability gradually in relationships. Look for relationships that welcome your authentic self. As researcher Brené Brown discovered in her work on vulnerability, Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. True kindness doesn't require sacrificing your authentic self. In fact, showing up authentically is one of the greatest gifts you can offer in a relationship. Trap 8. Missing opportunities for meaningful help. Our final trap might be the most surprising. Excessive generosity can actually prevent us from offering the most meaningful help. When we're caught in patterns of reflexive giving or people-pleasing, we often address symptoms rather than root causes. We provide what's easy to give rather than what's truly needed. Social worker. Often, the most meaningful help requires difficult conversations, boundaries, or allowing natural consequences. When we're focused on being seen as helpful rather than truly serving others, highest good, we tend to choose the path of least resistance. Think about these scenarios. Repeatedly loaning money to someone instead of helping them develop financial skills. Comforting a friend after every toxic relationship instead of having an honest conversation about patterns. Taking on a colleague's work rather than helping them develop necessary skills. Agreeing with someone to avoid conflict even when feedback would help them grow. Meaningful help sometimes requires us to say difficult truths with compassion. Set boundaries that encourage growth. Allow natural consequences that teach important lessons. Offer challenging feedback rather than automatic validation. Address root causes instead of just alleviating symptoms. I learned this lesson with my own brother who struggled with social anxiety. For years, I helped by making excuses when he canceled plans and stepping in to handle social interactions that made him uncomfortable. I thought I was being kind, but a therapist helped me see that my help was actually enabling his avoidance, the very thing maintaining his anxiety. The most meaningful help I could offer was encouraging him to seek treatment and supporting him through the discomfort of exposure therapy. It was harder than my previous help, but it was what he truly needed. Meaningful help requires discernment and courage. It means looking beyond immediate comfort to long-term well-being. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is what feels least kind in the moment. As we wrap up our exploration of the kindness trap, remember that true generosity isn't measured by how comfortable it makes others feel in the moment, but by how it contributes to their flourishing over time. Conclusion: finding the balance. We've explored 8 ways excessive kindness can backfire, from burning ourselves out to creating dependency in others. But I don't want to leave you thinking kindness itself is the problem. The world needs more kindness, not less. The challenge is finding the balance between generous giving and healthy boundaries, what psychologists call compassionate assertiveness. Here are 5 principles for practicing sustainable kindness. Know your capacity. Understand your emotional, financial, and temporal resources. Value authenticity. True kindness flows from your genuine self, not a people-pleasing persona. Consider long-term impact. Ask whether your help empowers or enables. Practice reciprocity. Cultivate relationships where giving flows in both directions. Include yourself in your circle of compassion. Remember that self-care enables sustained generosity. The philosopher Lao Tzu said, "To be gentle is to be strong." Real strength lies not in boundless giving until you're depleted, but in the wisdom to give in ways that honor both yourself and others. By avoiding these 8 traps, you can practice kindness that is sustainable, authentic, and truly beneficial, the kind that enriches both the giver and receiver. I'd love to hear your experiences with the kindness trap. Have you fallen into any of these patterns? How have you found balance between generosity and boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into psychological insights for better living. Until next time, remember, true kindness includes being kind to yourself.